Lawless bandits have been harassing travelers on these roads for months. Sent out from the capital, brave knights ride out to confront the marauders, only to be stopped in their tracks when the outlaws block the road with a fallen tree.
What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Craft Lair. I am the Crafter. This is the Lair. This week we've got a simple build coming along. I found some small model trees to scale at Michael's craft stores. I got 3 of them for about $11, and I just wanted to see if I could 3D model my own kind of preference of a miniature tree and see how that compares to the store-bought Michael's trees. So stick around. It's going to be a cool, simple build. Afterwards, I'll be giving away the STL files for free and uploading those, so you can check the link in the description. Give those a download. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'm always putting up new build videos. I'm always giving out free STL files. And pretty soon I'm going to be doing some giveaways, and I'm putting the structure in place for that. So be sure to like and subscribe and stick around. It's going to be fun.
So, diving right into the 3D models, I have the tree here. This is the same tree. It's just been replicated a few times and scaled differently. I've got a few different versions though. There is a version with a peg, so the peg can snap right onto the base of the tree and you glue it in place. You can also use magnets, which is what I did in the intro there, and it's got room for double stacked magnets on both ends, and that is strong enough to hold the tree, and same on the scaled version. There is a couple different sizes of magnet slots I included, so I think there's a 6x2 version on the large tree, a 5x2 version on the large tree and the small tree as well, and then a version of the large tree with the peg that you can then scale down if you want smaller trees. Getting started, I'm just going to be making sure I have some foam core bases that these can sit on. This way it'll blend in with my table a little bit better and provide a better base for these trees. I had a lot of fun with this. So I was walking through Michael's and I saw these ready-made trees, and they were approximately the right scale for 28mm miniatures, and they were about $12 for 3 of them. So I decided to pick them up, and honestly I've been wondering if I've been wanting to even use trees on my table. They kind of block players' sight lines a bit and they can get in the way, but there is something really nice about adding those vertical elements to your table. It makes it look a lot more kind of realistic and immersive. So I think there is at least some validity to using trees like this. And actually, what I think I arrived at with the magnets was a pretty cool solution for this. That way you can have your tree set up, and then if there's a tree blocking your player's line of sight, you can just go ahead and remove the top pretty easily, and it was pretty durable and robust. One note I do want to make for this is that I actually printed these trees out in 2 different printers. So one was an FDM print on my Ender 3 using PLA, and that did have supports, which was kind of difficult to remove, but not too bad. The other prints were done using my Elegoo Mars in resin, and while those worked fine, I will say this, the arms are much more fragile. So I actually went back, and before I had done any of the painting or anything like that, I had coated the resin printed trees in a thin coat of some Mod Podge, just to kind of stiffen all that up and make sure none of those resin pieces fall off. So when I first printed these out, I actually didn't intend on putting magnets in here, but the measurements just happened to work perfectly with my 5x2mm magnets, and I actually used my Dremel to just kind of remove that peg and place the magnets right up in there. However, after this, I decided to go back into the 3D model and replace that, so you can pre-print it with the correct dimensions for a couple different size magnets. I just super glue those in there, and I'm super gluing 2 stacked on top of each other on the bottom, and then 2 stacked on top of each other to the top, and mixing up some drywall compound to kind of mix that onto the base. I decided to make a nice base for the store-bought trees as well. Like, I didn't want those to stand out with their kind of small plastic base, although you could totally get away with playing with those. Again, just going in, putting in some glue, rock texture, and I'll cover all this in Mod Podge and paint it down white. This just gives it a nice texture. So I've seen a number of videos where they talk about whether or not it is worth even making trees or using them at all, or if you just buy them outright, or yeah, like I said, just get rid of them, or maybe just represent trees by having stumps on the playfield. And those are all honestly valid techniques. What I intend on using these trees for is just kind of setting these almost in the background, and ideally they're not going to be in locations that get in the way of my player's sightlines. And if I do come back to this project, I think I will make a number more of these magnetized trees so I can have them up and then just go ahead and remove the tops really easily. And you have the tree trunk there representing where the tree is, which is good enough for our purposes of D&D. And you can still have that immersive kind of reveal showing the full trees and then just kind of clear those out when you need to. I'm using some acrylic inks here and just going through and airbrushing all of that on. It came out a little glossy, and I decided to go in after that and use some Agrax Earthshade by Citadel and paint that over the trees to just kind of darken them up and take down that really golden brown tone. Following that, a nice dry brush with some Terminatus Stone here by Citadel, and just kind of trying to make the wood look a bit aged. There's a number of different ways to make trees. You could run some wire and create little armatures and maybe even use paper mache or like an air drying clay or Sculptamold and make some really cool kind of organic shapes. And I'm actually going to show you at the end of this video. I had made some large jungle style trees before I decided to do a YouTube channel, so unfortunately I don't have that on video, but I'll be able to show what that kind of process looks like and the result of that at the very end of the video. Honestly, I don't know if it'd be worth it if you were creating armatures. It creates a lot of work, and it was, I don't know, the result was okay. Certainly cool if you don't have a 3D printer, absolutely, but it was kind of quite a bit of work for that. Now, previously I was just adding some weathering compounds on the base, and then I'm going back in with my static grass applicator. Now that we have our trees painted up and ready to go, I'm using some Woodland Scenics bushes. You can also use clump foliage, that would probably look better than this. The bushes don't do a bad job. I go through and just kind of fill those out and stack those onto those little branches sticking out and use some hot glue. I found that to be like the fastest way to go about it. It does give you some stringing, which is not ideal, honestly, but it does stick the bushes down very, very quickly. And you can try to kind of create natural looking shapes. Even though the trees are the same, you can kind of apply the bushes in different areas for different effects, and it does make the trees look a little bit different. Going through some super glue now and just affixing the store-bought trees to their bases. So that about wraps this build up. Here you can see my store-bought trees alongside the 3D printed ones that I created and get a decent comparison of what they look like. Now obviously mine are quite a bit taller. I really do like that taller style of tree. It's almost like a redwood or like West Coast style tree. It doesn't block too many sightlines on the ground level, and I think that's kind of cool. However, these store-bought trees are a little more proportional and probably a little more realistic in that regard, so that might be something you're more interested in. Overall, I thought this was a really fun project, and I actually think the magnet idea of either having that be like a fallen tree and using that in your game, or having the trees put down in front of your characters and then removing the tops once those sightlines start to be impacted, I think that's a really kind of cool way to go about using trees and to kind of get around some of the frustrations that people have when playing tabletop games with miniature trees. So that leaves the question, store-bought trees versus crafted ones. I like my crafted ones. The 3D printer is a total game changer, and I think the magnet aspect is so cool. So I like my crafted ones, but what do you think? Store-bought or handcrafted? Let me know in the comments. And lastly, before we go here is another project I had mentioned earlier. I did this before I started my YouTube channel, so I don't have a build video for this, but it was built using a lot of natural materials. And then some of these larger tree trunks were actually just like thicker versions of toilet paper tubes. And I just kind of stuck those into the XPS foam and then built up some Sculptamold or DAS air drying clay and carved some lines into that and then created some armatures using, I believe it was a coat hanger, and then just wrapped that up with some air drying clay to create some of the limbs that I could attach the bushes to. And that worked well. It's definitely a different effect. They're much thicker and, I don't know, clumsier looking, but again, a pretty valid technique that worked out well. Again, I would say that these are much larger than scale trees. These are very exaggerated, almost like an enchanted forest style. But yeah, another way that you can go about making your own trees without a 3D printer at all. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. The STL files for this are available in the description, so go ahead, check those out, give them a download and print them out at home. Again, I am the Crafter, this is The Lair. Be sure to like and subscribe, there's a lot more awesome stuff coming. I'll see you in the next one.